The wind was absolutely whistling past us. It's pitch black. There's embers going everywhere, there's smoke everywhere. The winds were blowing around 100 kilometres an hour. It was a nightmare just standing there watching it.
Firefighting, it's a mixed bag. You don't know what you're going to get. Some days it could be easy, some days it could be hard, but it's that challenge of putting things together. One of our former first officers once said, firefighting is like playing a game of chess. It's all about putting the right pieces in the right place at the right time to achieve the desired outcome, which is obviously everyone going home.
All my problems seem nothing when I'm firefighting. It's about teamwork. We talk about mateship, but I've made some friends that were pretty tight. They've always got my back, so that's what I like about firefighting.
The 2019-20 fires were very different to what we'd seen previously in Queensland, and the main reason was the weather. It had been particularly dry in the years leading up to the 2019 season, and then the weather started really kind of blowing from the west, so we were getting a lot of hot air moving across consistently, and that meant that the fires we were getting were very large fires, and they went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. That was probably the biggest difference that I saw.
Previously, normally our fire season had only been a couple of months, 3-4 months. Our fire season pushed into the 8-month period. It took a big toll, especially on those people, those firefighters that really were committing all the time.
I did have a son on that fire ground. He rang me up. He said, "Oh, Dad, I'm going to the fires," and I felt good. And then I had a major concern for his safety because I know what they're like, but I just had to trust that his training and the people that he was with would have his back.
For me, probably the major fire for me was when the fire hit Binnaburra on the Gold Coast hinterland. We got called around 6 p.m. in the evening saying that they desperately needed crews because the fire had encroached on the Beechmont area. And so we jumped in a truck and we headed off up there. When we got there, we were kind of split into 2 teams, and we found that Binnaburra had already been cut off because the fire had gone over the ridge between the summit area of Beechmont and Binnaburra itself. So we couldn't get out there, it wasn't safe, there was trees falling.
Friday night, my now first officer gave me a call and said, "Hey, we're going out. They need us out there now." I said, "Well, no, I'm good for tomorrow, you know, because I didn't want to be wrecked overnight." Anyway, we went, no, we're going tonight. So we got out there.
The flames were coming up the hill because we were on the top of a mountain. It was coming up around 200 metres of mountain. The winds were blowing around 100 kilometres an hour, so we had embers and fire going everywhere in front of us. And we were just sitting there waiting realistically as the fire started to come up the mountain and impact on the houses that we could see in the other sector. And it was quite unnerving watching it happen because the wind was absolutely whistling past us. It's pitch black. There's embers going everywhere, there's smoke everywhere, and it was quite a stressful situation for everybody who was there because we really didn't know what was going to happen.
It was a lot of unknowns. There was people were being placed in positions where they were comfortable doing the job, but there was just so much information that was lacking for them to do the job.
Around 5 o'clock in the morning, we saw that the flames were starting to rip across the ground in front of us. And it was heading towards houses. So we jumped in the trucks, we reset to where we needed to be to start to protect those houses. And very, very thick smoke. Could hardly see your hands in front of you. Thick grass up to my neck, which is saying a lot because I'm over 6 foot tall.
That was probably the hardest night, just not knowing. That was very much a mental exercise rather than a physical exercise.
It left an indelible mark on me because of just the waiting for this fire to come while the wind's whistling past us, and we can see where we'd lost houses in the sector in front of us, and it was just, it was a lot to process.
Early in the morning we found out that there were multiple structures lost, which was something that I'd never experienced before. I get a radio call saying, "Hey, in this sector, we've lost multiple structures." And the crews were actually having to pull out of that area for their own safety. Speaking about it now, it still sends shivers down my spine. But looking back on it, it was a crazy experience. The crews then managed to get their way back in there and do what they can. word's going to get out. You know, we don't lose houses in Queensland at a big level like that previously. I got home and cried. Just the emotional release of, it was an overwhelming night. Had a long shower, just had a good sleep, gave my kids and my family a good hug, and then went out again the next day.
There's a lot of stress involved, especially in 2019-20, because it wasn't just one fire and then a week off and then another fire and a week off or something like that. It was like every single day we were getting a fire call, and it just became this consistent rolling on, and you were exhausted, you weren't getting enough sleep, you were in the smoke all the time. The whole of the Gold Coast, in fact most of Australia, was engulfed in smoke, so you couldn't get out of the smoke.
I think if I'd tried bottling it and tried being, you know, the brave man, it would have just, yeah, it would have torn me apart. I lost my father, you know, probably 8 years prior, and I learnt that bottling up those emotions doesn't work. So I was probably able to use some of the resources and tools that were given to me earlier in my life, after my father's death, to help process and just work and move on from that. You know, from that wasn't traumatic for me. It was a very emotionally draining event.
I was encouraged to paint pictures, so I have a number of fires in my shed, paintings of fires in my shed that I did, and so I was encouraged to paint. I used to do fire and rescue, so there was accidents and things like that that would turn out to, and I would just paint the scene, and that was it. And I was encouraged to do that.
If you'd like to become a volunteer firefighter, go for it. It's a noble cause. I'm lucky in the position right now. My son has just joined the brigade. He's just, you know, taking his first steps. Hasn't seen any live fire yet. Hasn't gone to a fire, but he's in that training phase of his firefighter career at the moment. You know, he's soaking it up like a sponge, and I'm as a father so proud and absolutely loving it.
Queensland have got some of the most experienced, hardened firefighters in the world. Like their resources are good, they're very well skilled, they've got a lot of experience, and they're hard. You cannot defeat them.